Hi everyone, I'm Tyler with Bedford Camera and Video. I'm sorry we couldn't meet in person this year at the Ozark Media Arts Festival, but I'm excited that we're able to share from our PhotoCon Live virtual learning series with you. Today we have renowned Nikon ambassador and photographer Moose Peterson. In this workshop, you'll learn the benefits of backyard birding and how to take amazing photos of wildlife in your own backyard. Take some notes and we hope you enjoy.
Howdy folks, thanks for dropping by. Moose Peterson here. A real common question is, how can I improve my wildlife photography? Now, I've had some success in the last few decades getting out with our wild heritage with the camera and coming back with their story. And I started that whole process and continue to build on it to this day with what I want to share with you in this next hour. You know, understanding biology is part of the storytelling process. At the same time, getting to know your camera gear and how you want to tell that story is another critical part of that process. Well, how do you marry that biology and technology together, especially when you just don't have Africa or Alaska in the backyard? You might be able to just not drop down to a wildlife refuge full of birds whenever you want to shoot. Well, I've got an answer for you. It's the one that I have been using myself for a long time. So I found the best place is backyard bird photography. Now, what does that all mean? What does that involve? Well, there are a lot of benefits to backyard bird photography. Creating your own shooting gallery. I'm not talking about pew, pew, pew kind of shooting gallery. I'm talking about click, 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 click. Okay? For example, you can shoot whenever you want, whenever it's convenient. Most work a 9-to-5 job. So you want to be able to sit there and shoot when you're in the mood, when the birds are present, when the light is right. So that's one of the best things about having your own backyard shooting gallery. And since you set it up, you can make the most of the gear you already own. In other words, you don't have to go out and buy big lenses to make this all work. I did in the beginning. And even while I use those now, that's not what I had when I started out. And those lessons are really important. The ones you learn, the basic foundation you get in the beginning. And since it's your own, right? It's your own personal testing laboratory. So when you want to try out a new technique, a new lens, flash, whatever happens to be, you don't have to go anywhere except just right in your own backyard. Now, no matter if your backyard is a house, an apartment, whatever, what I'm going to share with you works for all of those just the same way. Now, understand that I've had 3 guiding philosophies since my start. These are very simple personal guidelines that I'm not saying you have to use, but I'm definitely going to share them with you because they have served me very well. No photograph is worth sacrificing the welfare of the subject. In other words, if what I'm doing, my actions, the photography, whatever, risks the welfare of the subject, I leave. The photograph simply is not worth it. Okay, I understand that's been the core of my photography for over 40 years. Get close physically and isolate with optics. That means you have to understand biology, which you're going to learn in your backyard. To get close physically, then use the lens you have to tell its story. Pretty simple. I like using the KISS theory. Keep it simple, stupid. It works really well. Lastly, grab the heartstring with every click to tell their story. We're really fortunate we can go out and photograph critters. Not everybody is so fortunate. Let's bring those stories back and share them and grab heartstrings in the process. It's really kind of simple. Now, you've got to have fun in this process. If there's not fun, you won't keep doing it. And wildlife is a ton of fun. This is down in Australia with a bunch of parrots on me. Yeah, well, I had a little seed, but you'll understand that as we go through this, how that works. Got to have fun. Keep that in mind. Now, like I mentioned, I have been doing the same thing from the get-go. For those who aren't familiar with this is a slide film. And it's what it was like back in the days when you came back from a shoot. You had rolls and rolls and rolls of film to go through. I don't miss those days at all. But the lessons that I learned from back then, I still employ because they're very important. We keep building on what we've learned. I mean, my very first photograph, this Weston Meadowlark taken with a Nikkor 405.6, shooting out my 71 Camaro with the headers rumbling, brum, 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 and trying to keep that, camera steady. Yeah, turn off the engine. Important lesson. That's how this all works, okay? Now, all of this is all built in the backyard. My first experience with a nesting bird, Allen's hummingbird, and how I lit it was with a couple old Nikon flash. This is back in the days of the F3, where I had to literally solder together a couple cords just to get TTL. And while not the cutest thing until they're adult, lots of lessons were learned in the backyard photographing that nest, which I was able to take further on and volunteer for the Forest Service to go out and survey and count eggs and nestlings for a bird called Elise Bell's vireo. Why is that important? Well, it just so happens that the photographs, I was surveying during the day, and then in the afternoon I could sit there and photograph at my leisure. And I sat there and took basic photographs like you see here, which for scientists, researchers, is important anecdotal information, all the insects the parents are bringing into their young. So I shot all these, and then I sat there and took some of my what you call artsy-fartsy photographs. Ones might go out and grab heartstrings. Well, it turns out two things happens from this. The anecdotal information, they're able to expand the critical habitat for this bird because of all the insects I had recorded with my camera, them bringing in. And at the same time, my very literally first article that ever came out was that on the Elise Bell's vireo. It came out the same month that it was listed as endangered. So all of that comes from learning things in the backyard. That shy kestrel, when it gets that little cricket and you know where it's going to go because you learn this stuff from watching birds in your backyard, you can be there. Sitting down, getting low. Again, an American oyster catcher going for food. Big beach. How do you know where it's going to feed? You look for its food source. Getting down and intimate with the Atwater's prairie chicken, another very endangered critter. Lessons that I learned in my backyard allowed me to work on that project. Also made me able to sit there and think about how can I tell a story without actually, having it really obvious. If you look long enough in that Spanish moss, you'll see that barred owl staring out at me. All these lessons of the critters and their movement and their placement, like this black skimmer and its chick, dusky grouse walking on a branch, all of these come from being able to understand where the bird's going to be, what it's going to do, how that background, plays a huge part in telling the story, comes from the backyard. I mean, it's an elegant trogon, really nice backyard in Arizona. And how do I tell a story? It's in that hollow tree in a forest. And it's a combination of the bird, where it's sitting, and the background. All these lessons, and the most importantly, getting close physically. This is a sandhill crane. I'm so close, I've cut off part of its bill just to emphasize the lessons you can learn allow you to get that close safely, safeguarding the species' welfare, and come back with a photograph. So let's just get right into it, because that roadrunner, beep, beep, time to go. Because food is about to be served, and you're going to be the one serving it up. Now, people see a photograph like this, they go, wow, that's really cool. You learn that in the backyard? I get that a lot because I did. Now, bald eagles, they are absolutely a fascinating bird, incredibly great flyers. But here's the deal, right? They're after food, they're after salmon, and they are incredibly lazy. How lazy? Well, the salmon are floating down the Haines River here in Alaska, and the salmon are dead or spent. There's nothing to them. And an eagle sees one, kind of pulls it out of the creek, sits there and munches on it. And there's still more salmon going by, but another eagle, his buddy goes, oh, hey, my friend's got that eagle. And rather than just grabbing another dead one out of the river, they go over and they fight with each other for ones that somebody else has already pulled out. How do you know all this stuff? How do you get in the right place? Well, it all happens in your backyard. Now, creation of your backyard shooting gallery is really simpler than you think. Now, the National Wildlife Federation has a program, the Certified Wildlife Habitat. And you don't have to go quite this extreme, but here at the ranch, we are one of these certified wildlife habitats. And what does it require? Well, it's the same thing that you need for setting up your backyard shooting gallery. You need to have food. Food is really important. Just as important, if not so, more so, is water, what we call free water, biological terms. Okay, so we'll get into that. What most people don't think about is cover or shelter. And then lastly, if you want to be certified, is places for these guys to raise their young, which really is not that much of a further stretch from the other items. And this combination of 4 things is what brings the critters to your backyard, opening up lots of photo opportunities. Now, you only need 3 things to be successful in your backyard shooting gallery. Just 3. A bush or a shrub. And that bush or shrub, not what you think. It's pretty simple. Food and water, and purchase. Purchase might have just thrown you a loop, but hey, got you covered, buds. Okay, so let's go right into it. Food is basic, real simple. You got seed. We use sunflower seed hearts. Got your suet. We use commercial suet. Now, why do we use sunflower seed hearts? It's a great question. Now, if you're a sunflower seed enjoyer, you get those black hulls, you put them in your teeth, you bite down, you spit out this hull, and you eat the heart. Birds do the same thing. They can't eat the outside hulls. So that means that sunflower seeds, which is probably going to attract about 85% of the birds in North America, most places, if you do that, you're going to have a whole lot of black hulls on the ground. Really messy. And then they're not really efficient. Sometimes they'll drop them on the ground, and if this heart is still in the hull, they'll grow and make plants. Not always the best thing. And then that suet, you can go and get your basic fat from the butcher, and it doesn't cost you anything, and stuff it in that cage and works well, but it gets kind of rancid, smells. And the commercial suet comes in convenient cakes, has seeds or berries or different kind of things embedded in it, makes it clean, it's simple, and easy to use. Now, how much do we go through? We go through a lot here at the ranch. When it comes to the sunflower seed hearts, now we're here in peak season. We're going through about 300 to 400 pounds a month. It's a lot of seed. Suet cakes, not so much. The seed's the big seller. Now we have lots of ways of delivering that food to our critters. What you see here is one of our hanging platforms full of pine siskins. And at the height, we had about 500 or 600 of these guys a day. Now we're down to about 200 to 300 because they're migratory. And you will learn in your own backyard the seasons in which birds come and go, which is not only fascinating, varies up your photography a lot, making it fun and challenging all year long. So food, really important part of this process. Now they come in and they're munching away. And what they're doing is all that activity attracts other birds. So when we first got to the ranch, we had a couple of house finches. Real common bird, not really exciting. But that was all we had for a little bit. And then they attracted some other birds. And then they attracted more. And then they attracted more. And that's how it works. That's the best part. So we got these hanging platform feeders. We have some other kind of feeders. You can see to the left of the trunk there, a hanging feeder. And it's quote unquote squirrel proof. So if a squirrel jumps on it, it closes all the ports so that it can't get seed. I don't really worry about squirrels. We have them here. They eat in some of the feeders, but not all of them. So everybody can have a chance to munch when they want to. The other little feeder you see on the far right, that's a thistle feeder. And that's for smaller birds, smaller than the siskins. And the siskins are about the size of your thumb. And if you look at the ground, that's probably the cool part. I mentioned how birds aren't really clean eaters. Well, those sunflower seed hearts, while they're in the feeder up above, hits the ground, so the birds are on the ground feeding, cleaning up that seed as well. You got not only the siskins, but you'll have finches and grosbeaks and flickers. We have a quail, also depends where you live, all sorts of things will be on the ground feeding on that seed from above. So it serves multiple purposes. And if you take a second and look off to the very far left, you can see the two feeders I just mentioned. But look over here, you see that stump? That's a stump I actually planted in the ground myself. I call it the pileated perch. And I put it in there because it's somewhat rotten. And I'm hoping that all the activity of the feeders will get the attention of that pileated woodpecker. And he'll come over to this tree, which is slightly rotten, which is what they need for nesting. So in the perfect world, they're going to come over, they're going to excavate out their own cavity, and I can photograph a pileated woodpecker right from my backyard. Yeah, you can take shooting galleries that far. It's really kind of fun to watch it be kind of a wildlife detective, figure these things out and solve the problems to get them to come in. Now that suet, we put it in a little cage and I attach it to, as you can see, another piece of wood. And knowing that, I'm going to attach it because they're going to land on the other side of that tree and then kind of hop their way over to the suet. That's the normal way they do it. And this particular perch or feeder is another piece of log that I have buried in the ground at a point where I can easily photograph woodpeckers that happen to come into it. So everything's kind of got a plan where it's placed. And how does that come about? Kind of watching what's happening. So observing, I've got my siskins in the feeder, and I mentioned how they attract other birds, grosbeaks and blue jays, all that kind of fun stuff. Well, pine siskins are kind of the M&M species. So if you look in the background there, you'll see another bird that they attracted. Yeah, right there hiding. Now, I didn't say siskins were the most bright birds out there in the flock because that bird that the arrow is pointing to is a Cooper's hawk. Cooper's hawk makes a meal out of the siskins. Yep, snatches them right out of the air and eats them. So those siskins, bless their little hearts, are attracting this really cool bird. Yeah, that's him. That's the Cooper's hawk. We also have a sharpshin that comes out. Really cool things. And as you can see, he's gotten really accustomed to me being out there. This is shot handheld with a 180 400 millimeter at 400 millimeters. And I'm out there photographing him. There he is on a perch over one of the water features. There he is in that tree. And I kept working with him. And finally, I got that really nice, clean shot, literally taken in my backyard. Now, here's the funny thing. Just before I came in to record this class, we're out there watching, and he's on the perch sleeping. I mean, his head's down, he's snoring out cold. That's kind of cool, and that's in my own backyard. I mean, that is the amazing things that come from backyard bird shooting galleries. Now, food itself, seed and suet, isn't the answer for everyone. Understand that. First of all, food can get really expensive. Take it from somebody who's, buying 400 pounds of seed a month, it can really add up. It also, it can get really messy. You can have a spouse who doesn't want all that mess in their garden. You can have a landlord that doesn't want all that stuff on their property. And that, there's no way around it. Birds aren't clean. Because what goes in, it comes out the other end too. Don't forget that part, okay? And, hey, seed can attract unwanted guests, rats and mice, things like that. You might not want those on your property. It's okay. So don't worry about it. We got an answer for you. I thought this out and gone through it myself. So here's a solution for you. Yeah, plain old water. It's amazing. Now, critters need more water, depend on water more than they do food. Water is something that, you think about it, isn't everywhere. Now, they can find food most places. Water, that's the tricky part. So we have your basic bird bath. It's on a hanger, as you see here, on the edge of the railing on the deck. It's a really, really busy place. So what's with the rock in the water? Great question. Thanks for asking. That rock breaks up the surface tension of that water. You can see a little bit of highlights there where that rock breaks it up. And that allows the birds not only to find the water quicker, but gives some birds a place to perch because they don't like the edge as much as that stick. And what I've done, and there's the basic water bath, I have a stick that I have bungee cord across the side of it for birds like this red-breasted nuthatch that they can grab onto that and then they bend over and get their drink. Now here's the trick and the technique to making the bird bath even more successful. In the wintertime, they would normally freeze up, but there are bird bath heaters. Just a little unit, goes in the water, just keeps it at 40 degrees. Doesn't make it like a sauna or something like that. It strictly keeps it so it doesn't freeze. So you can see the edge of the bird bath has ice. The water is open, so this mountain chickadee could go in and drink. This is such a popular place in the wintertime. Now you could say I have taken this a little bit to the extreme. Bird bath, we have many bird baths on the railing on the ground, but here at the ranch, well, I took it even further. This is water feature version number 4. Number 4 because I keep improving it. And it's a basic, it's 8 foot long, about 5.5 foot wide. Right now it's just plastic lined. The next version will have cement. But it's the same idea. There's water and I've got rocks in it for them to see that it's water, and then logs and sticks for them to land and get a drink. That photograph I showed you a second ago, by the way, of the Cooper's hawk, you can see the 2 perches it was on there, the end of the vertical one at the end of the water feature and the one over the center there hanging over. That's where the Cooper's hangs out. Perfectly easy to photograph. Now, the birds come to the water in vast numbers. I mean, just huge numbers. And that's what it's all about. But don't want to necessarily photograph them there at the water. Now, the last thing that ties in the food and the water to you photographically is shelter. Brush, bushes, shrubs, that's shelter. If you look at the very lower right corner, you can see a little bit of the black tarp from that water feature. Because the birds will go either into the tree that's off in the top left corner or into the wild rose you see here. And that's where they can hide from the Coopers. At least that's what they think, and that's where they feel secure. And that's all that matters. Since we've seen a few sitskins die, we know it doesn't work all the time, but that's another story. So shelter. You could be saying, well, Moose, I live in an apartment. I don't have a place for a wild rose shrub. That's totally understandable. You get a potted plant and you move it around where you need. Yeah, that's all you need, a potted plant. Doesn't take much for them to feel safe. And that's the idea. We're tapping into their basic biology to bring them into our shooting gallery so we can photograph them. Now, you can't do simply a little brush pile. That's enough, too, for birds to be able to duck into that and get away from that predator, be it avian or on the ground. It doesn't take much for them to feel secure. And that brush pile, it's easy to make as well. So these are just some of the basics to get your shooting gallery up and going. Now you could take it a little bit further, and as you might imagine, yeah, I've taken it further. We have bird boxes all over the ranch here on the property. In the foreground, you can see a basic bluebird, mountain bluebird, western or eastern bluebird kind of box, about 1.5 inch diameter hole. And then the background, that's the big one. That's the one for like screech owls and pygmy owls, little owls that are about the size of a dollar bill, a little bit bigger. And that's a big box for them. So we have lots of those across the ranch to promote, the raising of kids. That's bringing shelter and homes into it. That's the last part of that certified wildlife habitat for your backyard for the Wildlife Federation program. And they are, instantly active. And I was really grateful. We had red-breasted nuthatches use a box this year, which is really kind of rare. They tend to use nesting cavities. Because there's so much food, though, and water, they felt that they could raise their young. They did successfully. They've been around for quite a while. In fact, you could say they're still hanging around the property here. And they're just a great little bird. So happy that it's fun to listen to them and watch them go about their daily chores as they get food and water. So let's get down to brass tacks. I mean, how did all this help you get photographs, let alone improve your photography? Because that's what it's all about here, right? Well, understand that we want to understand biology and combine it with technology to get the photograph. So we cover the biology part. So let's get to this, really darn good question. How does this help your photography? Well, we don't want to photograph the birds in the feeders or in the bird baths. That's not the point of capture. That's just what brings them in. And that shelter, okay, is what kind of gives them a place to base in and out of as they go to the food or to the water. They go into the plant, go to the food, go to the plant, go to the water, back and forth. So that shrub isn't where we really photograph them most of the time. You can if you've got a lucky, clean kind of shrub, which is hard to do. What you want to do, though, it all starts and ends with the perch. Yeah, I mentioned that earlier. You might have been wondering, what's this perch thing? So I'm not talking about a fish here. No, no, no. So here's a pine siskin. Now, I keep picking on them because they're easy to pick on. Ask the Cooper's hawk. Now, the pine siskin, not much bigger than your thumb. They're really small birds. If you're out in the wild and you happen to see them, you're going to see them way up in the tree, just a micro dot of a bird, and photographing them, as you go on your walk is nearly impossible. I've tried for a long time. That's why I was just so excited to have them come to the backyard, because that bird that's the size of your thumb, not a bad photograph if I say myself, because that perch with those lichens and stuff from the pine forest, you can kind of get an idea why they have the plumage they have, because they blend right in. But here's the thing, that perch that it's sitting on, yeah, it's my perch. I went out and collected it and stuck it by the water feature, and that's where that pine siskin was when I took a photograph. Yeah, it was amongst all that stuff, right? And they just, boom, took his picture on my perch. And you might be saying, well, hey, what's with that light stand? What's with that right there? Well, that light stand is holding that Justin clamp, which is holding another perch. So I have, you could say, 3 stories of perches. I have first, second, and third story. The top one you see here is the third story. Then you see that vertical one, again in the background, that the Cooper's hawk was on. And I have it on a light stand so I can move the perch wherever I want. Because as long as that shrub, in this case that wild rose I showed you, is a little bit out of frame on the left, and the water's down below, the birds go back and forth. And they go the shrub to the perch, the water to the perch, the plant, back and forth, back and forth. I mean, it's just basic biology. And with that light stand, I can move that perch where I want it. Now, why do you want to move perches? Well, first you got to collect them. Some people say I take perch collecting a little bit too serious. Actually, no, that's just a big brush pile. But those perches, I go out and actually look for them. I have them for many different habitats, so I can change the perch based on the bird. Pine, manzanita, oak, whatever I need. I go out and I have a stash of them in the garage that I can switch in and out. Perch selection is important. Small diameter, it's got a lot of character. Because now placement of the perch is everything. It's everything, okay? You want to place that perch based on the background. Here's where you start really fine-tuning your photography. You start thinking about the background in your backyard. When you go to those places like Africa or Alaska places, you're going to start thinking about that background. When the bird lands or the critters on that spot, you can start thinking about moving left or right or up and down to improve that background. You start in your own backyard. Because knowing this, you can set your perch anywhere you want in your background to make it best for you. So say, for example, you find the best light in your background, in your backyard, is like after you get home from work in the evening. So then you would put out your food, you put out the shrub, the shelter, and you put out the perch based on that light, based on the best background to make the best photography. And these lessons you learn in your own backyard, they sink in and they help you get better as you go out to those great places. Yeah, while we do have bald eagles on our backyard, no, we have not photographed them there yet. This is somebody else's backyard up in Alaska where Gene, had a whole lot of bald eagles. Same thing, food and purchase. It wasn't anything, radical. Same that I've been talking about. But I want to bring up the placement of that perch and thinking about that background. Here's something to think about. So here's your bald eagle on a perch. I'm shooting with a 400 millimeter lens. I'm at an f2.8. Now I'm going to close the aperture down slowly. I want you to watch the background because the eagle itself, I focus there. You focus on the eye of the bird. That is essential. It has to be tack sharp. Now you don't have to necessarily focus literally on the eye of the bird. You can focus on its breast. It's the same plane as the eye. It's a bigger target. But the bottom line is the eye has to be sharp. And you won't see any change in the eagle as I change the aperture and close it down. But watch the background. That's what it's all about. Because we go from 2.8, f4, 5.6, keep on going down, f8, 11. Look at the background. Start seeing some horizontal lines going through the body. f16, f22. Now you can see the ocean. Now, depending on the story you want to tell, you might want to have shot wide open. You might want to have closed down. But here's the thing. That background is over 100 yards behind that eagle. Because of that, even at f22, I can't pull that kind of focus. That's the key for placement of your perch in your own backyard. Now, I don't want you going away dejected. Anybody can do this, whether you're in an apartment, a home, big spread, small spread. You just have to think through these basic fundamentals. Placement of that perch, okay, and the math of setting it up so you have what? As far away background as possible behind them so you can sit there and blow it out. So in this case, you look at that background, that color. What do you think that background is? It's literally the bottom of our deck. Yeah, it's just a piece of 2x6 that's been weathered. But you can't tell because it's about 15 to 18 feet away. It's totally blown out. And here's the thing. You put that perch, one, thinking about that background, trying to get as far away as you want, okay? And as long as, your neighbor's house isn't pink or purple, some gosh awful color, you're golden, right? Green, grays, blues, those are all great background colors, especially if they're out of focus. And you place that perch, one, thinking about that background, and two is how close does it need to be to you to get the image size you want? That's right. You have 200 millimeter, 300 millimeter, whatever lens you have, you put that perch so when the bird lands on it, it's the image size you want. That's why you have that light stand. You can move it around. I mean, there's lots of ways of attaching a perch. You can stick it in the ground. You can put it on a light stand. I've screwed many a perch into the side of the house or the railing. I didn't tell Mr. Landlord, and I just put it up when I left, but that's an whole nother story too. You just think about the photographic way of putting it all together for your lens and your background, and you make it work. Here's a perch. What's the background? It's way off the distance. It's just a bunch of trees, but you look below, you can see Sean's house, his trailer, all that stuff. But because it's so far away, even at f32, you can't see it. That's what you think about. Put the perch out, you got the nice light, the lens you've got, the background, and you shoot. It's seriously. I mean, this means you can set up your camera anywhere, okay? And that's the beauty. You can shoot out the window of your house. Take out the screen, shoot it right out the window. I do it. Lots of people do it. Around the globe, I have all these people who have, conversed with me and the success they've had doing exactly what I'm recommending to you here. You can use a pocket blind like you get from Lens Coat, and you can set that up on the deck or in your lawn. Now, me personally, I just actually just sit out there with a cup of coffee and just shoot away. It's so incredibly simple. You're going to say, that really sounds way too easy to be even possibly productive. But you just set up that perch where you want to shoot and you're golden. It's that simple. You bring them in with the food, the water, provide them that shelter, give them the perch to sit on between those as they traverse back and forth, and you've got your photograph. And You just want to keep it simple, stupid. So you want to set up where you have the light. You don't have to worry about bringing in flash unless you want to learn flash or perfect flash. And you make it so you can do it when you can and have a ton of fun. That's the whole goal here, is to have fun and then learn so much about biology and technology that whenever you go on any trip, anywhere, you can apply all the lessons that you have gained there in your backyard to anything. And that's the goal. Now, all these photographs that I'm going to show you here were literally photographed in a backyard at feeders. Because I visit other backyards, not just my own, because they're all different. You know, you can go to a marsh, you can go to a desert, you can go to the mountains, you can go to a prairie, and each backyard is going to have different birds. But they still want food, still want water, still want shelter. Give them a perch. So this couch is kingbird, you know, kind of a unique bird, up close, 400 millimeter lens. A crested caracara. Yeah, there's a lot of raptor blinds out there that, you know, the raptors come right in. Shot with 600 millimeter. That background, good 30 feet away, totally blown out. All you see is that gorgeous orange and white. Great bird. Curve-bill thrasher. They spend a lot of time on the ground, so it's coming up to a water feature, get a drink. Not really going to use a perch. They're ground birds. So that means that you have to be on the ground if you want to blow out that background. So it's going to be a long distance away. Really great lessons you can apply a lot of times, like photographing shorebirds on a beach. Golden-fronted woodpecker. Yep, the other side is where the suet feeder is. He landed, and I had it already pre-set up. I love that blue, and that blue is just a person's house way in the background. So it's, you know, that gold crest on his head against that blue pops. Real quick, simple things from the backyard. Greater roadrunner. I love watching these guys. They are just, when they come up to a water feature, because they're another ground bird, they don't use a perch. They come up and they come up and they stop, come up and they stop, come up and stop, looking around, just like you might have seen back in the days in a cartoon. They are quite the characters. A favorite of mine is the green jay. I love these guys. Now, late afternoon, he just got done taking a bath, and that's a really great photo opportunity with birds when they get done taking a bath. They're all fluffed up. They've been preening. You can see that soft color. Just a great, another simple shot from a blind at a bath. Yeah, Harris hawks. They come into blinds too. Come into backyards. It's just a great, great bird. Red-breasted sapsucker. That's another tongue twister bird name for you. Another one waiting its turn, in this case, to get to the suet. And that was the opportunity. And again, in the background is another person's house, but because it's so far away, you just see a suggestion of color. You don't see any shape or form. You just have to think about where you have those perches and make the opportunity happen. You know, scissored tail flycatcher, another great bird, waiting on a barbed wire fence, its turn to get into the bird bath. Yeah, a lot of these photographs, birds at a bird bath. Like I mentioned, water is essential. They use it all the time. And all these lessons, they just keep building up over time, and they allow you to get close physically. That allows you to use optics to isolate them. Yeah, I'm talking about getting close physically. I mean, there's a calf moose licking my camera on 400-2.8. I don't mind. It's getting close physically. That's how you get the photographs. And like I've said, I've taken many things to extremes, from water features to perch collection to getting close physically, because that's our son Jake, getting close, very close physically with a grizzly bear. These are all basic lessons that you start learning and reinforce in your own backyard, which is why I promote and highly encourage you to create your own shooting gallery. It's fun, it's productive, and the photographs, they can reach out and grab heartstrings. That's really what it's important to remember in this process. So let me just finish up with that one little thing, and let me see if I can grab some of your heartstrings. I'm humbled and honored to be a Nikon ambassador, and I'm here to help you in any way I can. So this is where you can find me. Lots of places, everywhere from Twitter and Facebook, Instagram, my websites, and of course, you're always welcome to email me with questions or your needs. Thanks for coming by. You go out and make every click your story.